I'm Kelly Kurtz. I'm from Lam Research, and most folks don't understand who Lam Research is, and so I'm going to tell you a little bit about who we are. I'll talk about why we selected Appian and how we got to our first successes, kind of the road to getting there, and then the road to where we're going throughout the coming years as well. Lam Research is a semiconductor capital equipment manufacturer. You're going to say, well, what's that mean to me? And really, we build equipment that takes a slice of your hair, if you slice it into 1,000 pieces from a lengthwise perspective, and we put an etch into a glass or a 300 millimeter wafer, put a 3D stair step in there, deposit metal on it, and do 500 processes until it turns into something called the chip that ends up in your phone. So whether you know it or not, we've actually been integral in developing the technologies that you use today on an everyday basis. We're about 7,200 people right now worldwide. We're housed in Fremont, California, in the Bay Area. The thing that most people remember is we're about half a mile from the Tesla facility. And so you get to see all the new Teslas come in and out down the street, test drive through there as well. We have revenues right now of about $5.3 billion and growing, as you can see, year over year for the last couple of years, with operating margins of about 16.5%. We serve an etch, deposition, and clean semiconductor market. We don't serve the entire marketplace like Applied Materials does. We serve certain sectors right now. And we're located throughout the globe. But this is kind of the step process associated with how to build an IC. And as you can see, we actually participate in 5 of the 7 processes. We don't try to go into anything overarching right now. So how did we choose Appian? When we got started with this process, we were actually looking for something that said, how do we document our business processes? Because we went through an integration with a company called Novellus. We bought them, and we did our entire value chain, documented the whole thing. But guess what? It never changed. And you can't tell me in 2 years that our business processes didn't change, just the documentation didn't change. And so we were looking for a solution to make sure that the documentation matched the business process as it changed. But as we went through looking at it, we said, wow, we're kind of missing the boat. We actually need to integrate the different silos of business processes that exist and document those as we integrate them and build them out. Because we had a lot of different siloed processes. I'm going to guess that no one here has those, though, right? Didn't think so. So our objective ended up being developing a means of reducing the duplication that was occurring and bringing those disparate business processes together into a single process, preferably with a single interface. And the reason we changed that is because what we found is that if we were able to do a single interface with those multiple back-end systems that were very distinctly different, we get a whole lot bigger bang for our buck by going through that process and expanding on that. And that's why we went with a BPM solution. But why did we choose Appian? By far, it was the easiest solution for us from a bottoms-up approach. We had a 3-day runoff with them and some of their competitors, and well, you can guess who won. But I mean, it was very clear that in 3 days, what Appian did, the competitors couldn't even do in 5 days. Matter of fact, one of the competitors said, hey, can we have an extra week because we had this fumble, this fumble, this fumble. I said, sure, take the extra week. Here's the room. At the end of that 2 weeks, we still didn't have a solution that worked for us. So that's when we started going deeper and deeper into Appian. We were able to re-engineer our business processes during that period of time that we actually had them work on a small project for us, that we had executives take a look at, and they said, wow, there's a solution that can do that. And we said, sure enough, it's right in front of us. So our first project, we said, let's undertake something that has meaning, something that has some breadth to it, something that will kind of demonstrate to a larger audience the changes that can happen when we do this. And so we came up with a project that would go live in 10 days. So it's a short process. It's turned easily. And this process actually happens once a year. So we said, let's start on day 1. We had day 8 through 10, we were going to do user testing. And how many people, when they get into testing, said, this doesn't work? And in our case, it was the executive decision that someone made in another executive's absence that says, we need to make sure we don't do this. So we didn't. But that fundamentally changed the entire project. Because when they decided, no, we need to do that, that was in testing. In that test phase, they said, we need to add 4 fields for this, we need to add a field for this, and all the logic associated with those 4 fields that we're adding needs to determine the decisions that are made downstream for each one of them. So I was talking to my guy who's an SAP developer, and I said, Morley, how long is it going to take us to actually do this if we decide to do it in SAP or in a SQL solution or something like that? He said, Kelly goes, you're talking 4, 6, 8 weeks just to add those in. And I said, really? I said, would it surprise you if the Appian folks told me it's going to take us another 3 days? So they added those 5 fields, they added the logic in, we went into test 2 days later and went live on day 13. Then on day 14, we took it out to the regions, went through Asia, went through Europe, and it was spread out. Guess what their first question was? Where's the Excel download? And I said, you guys gotta be kidding me. We're talking about record management, right? And we said, we wanna do things on a record by record basis. We don't wanna do this download. We don't wanna do this. We don't wanna actively do these things in batch. We want them real time. Then their next question, well, can we have an Excel upload button? I said, no guys, you don't get this. But they did have some great ideas. And so we turned those enhancements around in 7 days with another go live, with a final one going live 35 days in total. That's the agility. That's the enhancements. That's the iterability that Appian gave us. Right now, we've got a roadmap that looks like we've got 5 applications live. We plan on we've got 7 in works right now, and we're looking at about 18 in the first 12 months. We had an ROI. We're on the right roadmap with achieving an ROI in about 9 months period of time. But to that end, as you heard from a lot of people, it requires a lot of governance and a strong accountability system, and I think we've got those in certain instances. We're driving heavily for cycle time reduction and improving those response times to our customer that allow us to be more responsive to them and give them what they want when they want it, as opposed to taking 3 weeks to do something and say, oh, now here's your answer, and then coming back and said, wait, but now my question's changed. We don't do that. Appian helps us do that. So we're eliminating a number of pieces of activity as we start integrating these disparate processes that are talking to SAP, talking to SQL, talking to SAP, and SharePoint, and you've got one front end that's doing that all for us. But it really, my group is really chartered with ensuring that we have business processes and systems in place for our 3-year scalability targets, and Appian is a piece of that puzzle that will allow us to do that. Unfortunately, our 3-year target that they gave me, we hit last year, which was 9 months after they gave it to me. And my CIO looks at me and goes, well, did you do it? I said, well, yeah, they kind of run out of a little runway there. But we're getting there. We are getting there. But some of the things that we've kind of struggled with, and we did. We struggled with some of the back-end interfaces. The SAP, we're in the cloud, for instance, and the SAP connector didn't work in the cloud. And the Appian project services folks were the ones who were developing the first application for us and said, oh crap, this doesn't work. And Michael Beckley was amazing and his team was amazing. And we really leveraged the Chief Customer Office to turn that around. And Michael was talking to me on the phone every other week, giving me a status update, helping us understand when we need to be involved when testing, what else we need to do, what parameters we need to test to. But if you aren't leveraging his organization, you need to make a contact. You need to talk to your account executive and say, get me in front of the CCO. Get me in front of their organization, because they really helped streamline that. And I know Wayne's back here, and he can attest to, sometimes we'd hit roadblocks. And it would take me calling Michael. Michael would say, thanks for giving me a call. We had some reporting capabilities, report writing capabilities that were a little more difficult, and we leveraged the assurance contract along with Beckley's organization to do that. Great turnaround. They're already using it in multiple applications today, the stuff that they did through the assurances contract. Recommend that as well. But we do have a regular interface with them. We have regular meetings with Appian every week. And that's all part of the overarching program accountability, and that's what Appian helps us deliver. And it's, again, a step to the partnership. But how are we rolling it out overall the next few years? We do have a governance body set up. All the projects get vetted through this governance body. There's a data governance team that talks about the data that's in the records themselves and how that goes into our enterprise data warehouse, and that's merged with another information delivery system that we have, or project team. We've also got a listing of best practices that we're putting together with the users group. And as they're building applications, they're talking about what works well, what didn't work well, how we leverage other tools. Some groups found these tools work best. Other folks said, these thought they would try them, and we'd come up with the best practices out of that. But then we also have and actually it's a SharePoint site where we have all the applications that we've launched, and they all reside there, but also we're developing the metapedia associated with it. So all the objects that we created are going to be there as well, so we aren't reinventing objects, and we're essentially creating a library of objects that allows anybody who's building those applications to leverage those as well. We're doing the same thing with our BOPIs on the back end with SAP, understanding what fields are there, understanding what we've developed, what we've designed in, so other people can leverage those. Our first 3 programs really were built around a standalone application that, the quick apps probably would work better with now, but it was a standalone application. One was integrated with our SAP instance, and one was really an Office 365 and Active Directory application. Then we took the next 2 projects, and one is kind of integrating a couple of those applications. Another one is very, very large, and then the other one is kind of a hybrid between some stuff that we're doing with Active Directory as well as what we're doing as a standalone application. One of our biggest problems, though, is that the demand for these resources, and we are decentralized, so we are not an IT-centric group building these applications. It's a business unit group, and IT is helping to build the backends, and you're going to see something about that in just a little bit. But the demand is really outstripping our ability to maintain control all the time. And even though sometimes I really do want to, Matt and I are talking, you do want to move faster and faster and faster, but sometimes you gotta take a little bit of a breath and say, okay, now we might want to slow down a little bit, but I'm in that mode where we need to start turning these things quicker for a couple other reasons. But our backlog is growing, and it will continue to grow, I believe, because every time someone sees something, they're asking, hey, can we do this? Hey, can we do this? And so that backlog, we're seeing that demand grow out. And we've built out our subject matter experts that are kind of 25 process experts in the company, and with some IT back-end support. And that's kind of how we're doing for that. But we really have leveraged the assurance program, and we really have leveraged how we're doing training. Now, this last piece is something that's kind of different, I think, for what we're trying to do from a goal perspective, is to actually build out an entire business process, and all those integrations usually is 100% of IT's work. What we're trying to do, and what our goal is to have 80% of that work done in the business, and then the hard lifting with the back-end systems is the IT stuff. So we're trying to do an 80-20 breakout. We're trying to do 80% business, 20% IT, and that's our goal. So, in general, our project team was amazing. The Appian team was amazing that came in to help us with our first couple projects. In fact, a lot of those folks felt like they were part of our team. They helped us learn a lot. They built applications. And today, those applications are live, and they're still a phone call away to say, hey, if I want to do this, if I want to iterate this, how would I do it? And they're answering our questions. They're there for the long haul. And they are truly a partner of ours. So thanks to them. And then from 6 months since we've procured the software, we have 5 applications that are live. But our appetite continues to grow. And that number, that 23 number, when we start talking about some of the things we want to do in the region, because my boss has asked me, he's in Asia this week, and he said, Kelly, he goes, you need to get out here. It's just ripe with opportunities. I said, I don't think I need a whole lot more opportunities, but thanks, Steve. That's nice of you to offer. But we do continue to push the bounds of what's really possible, what's in the realm of possibility for us versus what people thought they could do. And this really is, just on the cusp of what we can actually do in changing our business processes at Lam. I really feel that as we go through, it's public knowledge that we're acquiring KLA-10 core. As we go through that integration, this can be gangbusters with how we use Appian in an integrated company for 13,000 employees. And I think Appian is just going to be, we're just on the foundational steps of how we're going to grow that platform. Now to bring you some dynamic content, Matt's going to talk a little bit about what's going on up there.
Okay. So my name is Mathieu Drouin, or Matt Drouin in English. And I'm a solution architect for Telefilm Canada. So today I'm going to talk to you about how Appian Cloud can help you enable Agile development. So before I begin, I'm just going to give a bit of background on Telefilm Canada. We're a Government of Canada Crown corporation, and we provide financial support to the audiovisual industry. So that's for film, TV, digital media, and others. We have a $90 million program budget. We also administer the funds for the Canada Media Fund, and that's up to $375 million. We have 4 offices spread out over Canada, 200 employees in a bilingual environment, so we're much smaller than Lam Research, but we have different challenges. And finally, we've been an Appian Cloud customer since 2014. So to give you a bit of context, this is Telefilm's core business process. We start out by getting a request for money. People ask for money, they want to finance their film, they want to finance maybe a TV show, and then we evaluate the request, we make a decision, positive, negative, and then we go into contracting. We have to negotiate a contract with the person, or the applicant rather, and determine some conditions, some drawdowns. And then finally, once the contract is signed, then we go in the execute contract phase where we're doing payments, drawdowns, and making sure that the conditions are fulfilled. Basically making sure that the money that we're sending out in grants and contributions is being spent appropriately. So this core business process, and this is a big difference, is that we're replacing a system of record here. We have 3 different legacy applications supporting this core business process at the moment, and still being phased out. And the issues that we have with these 3 legacy applications, they've been developed at 3 different times, 3 different technologies, 3 different UIs, and it's very hard to find some consistency in there. Right now we have slow time to market, so we're talking 10 to 12 weeks for sometimes very simple changes. High maintenance costs, that kind of goes in line with the slow time to market. If it takes longer to market, it's probably going to cost you more in maintenance. There's also the expertise price that comes with it, because there's a lot of technologies. You have to find the proper expertise to maintain all this. And we're a small organization. That's the challenge that we have, is we don't have all the expertise. We have like 2 sysadmins, for the whole organization. We also have availability and performance issues. We can't keep the technology up to date. There's so many frameworks, so many technologies. We can't possibly keep it up to date with the amount of people that we have. And so inevitably, over time, the technology becomes old, and then we have security issues, and then performance issues, and we can't upgrade, and so on. And finally, poor usability. We have 3 different UIs, they're all different, and people have to go in one system to do something, they have to go in another system to do something else. It's a very steep learning curve. I mean, people who have been there for years and years know how to do it, but if you have to onboard a new employee, it's not very easy. So the solution we came up with, and that was in 2014, was to modernize our IT infrastructure. And we wanted to replace these legacy aging systems with one unified application platform, which in occurrence was Appian. So we made a first attempt at replacing our legacy system. It lasted 7 months. We had a hybrid project management framework, so we were doing the Scrum Fall, or the Agile Waterfall, whatever you want to call it. And finally, we also had a large, highly structured team. You know, we had roles for everybody, and it was really cut out. And it was a large team. We had consultants, business analysts, system analysts. It was very, very large. So what happened with that first attempt? After 7 months, we did have a product. It worked. But in the end, we were like, well, it took us 7 months to build it. That's way too long. And we were kind of disappointed. I was here at Appian World last year, and I was asking everybody, well, everybody's talking about time to market. It's so quick and everything, but how come we didn't achieve that? We came to the conclusion there was a couple of reasons why it never materialized. The first one was we had a complex data model. So we started from the get-go with the data model, and it was very, very elaborate. And it was based on the old system. Second, we had backwards compatibility requirements that really hindered that kind of led to the complex data model. We wanted to keep the backwards compatibility, and so we had to develop the data model that came with it. And the data model was complex because we were stuck in our legacy system mindset where it was a CRUD-based system that wasn't process-based, so we had to track everything. And so there was a lot of information there that probably shouldn't have been there, should have been just kept in the process. We also favored customizations over built-in functionalities. A lot of times the instinct was, oh, this is not enough. The Appian functionality is not enough. We've got to do something over and beyond. Because we had like a lot of validations and a lot of rigidity in what we had built, a lot of business rules, and that we were unable to adapt to changing requirements as the project evolved. So 4 months in, somebody comes in and says, okay, well, it's not really the way that's not really the way it should work. And we had so many rules in place and so much code that it was really hard to change. And finally, we were really reproducing the status quo. We were basically repainting an old house, putting a fresh coat of paint, but we weren't fixing the foundations. So after that conclusion, we went back to the drawing board. We said, okay, we gotta start over. So over the summer, we went in the whole process re-engineering effort. We had work groups with the business. So everybody was around the table, and we were like, okay, we gotta look at this. We gotta look at what we can do to make it go faster. And so we went through a whole process where we re-engineered our processes to take into account the fact that we had this new Appian tool. So the second attempt lasted 3 months. It actually lasted a little less than that, but I'm being conservative. We went with a pure Agile approach. So we didn't have we had a bird's eye view of what we wanted to do, but we didn't have any very specific requirements around what it needed to be in the final product. We just needed to get from the request to managing the contract. We had a small multidisciplinary team, so 5 people. That was a big game changer. To get a project off the ground, to get some traction, which is really important, you need a small team. A large team makes for a lot of conversations, a lot of people talking over each other, and it's very, very hard to get a consensus in that scenario. And then finally, over the summer, during our whole re-engineering effort, we came up with new guiding principles that would guide the development of the second attempt. The first one was convention over configuration. So reuse what you can. So if there's something available in the app market, if there's something available just in Appian, use that. Don't develop. Agility over control. Don't build up so much rigidity in your system. You have to kind of leave it open for changes later on. If you build too much rigidity, then you lose the agility. Reliability over features. Usually we had the instinct of always building features. Somebody would ask for something, we'd build a feature. Somebody would ask for something, we'd build a feature. Now we're like, okay, well, let's build a couple of core features, but have them work really well. A bit more of the Appian or even the Apple philosophy. And finally, continuous improvement. We might not get it right the first time. We might not get it right the second time, but probably we're going to get it right the third time. In the first attempt, we wanted to get it right the first time. And that's most of the time not going to work. So what happened there? So the second attempt was an actual success. We delivered on time, on budget, and we were meeting business needs. We could get the application all the way from beginning to end and pay the client and do the follow-up on the conditions. So, and why was that? Why did it work the second time and not the first time? We had a lean team structure, like I talked about. Less noise, less people talking around the table, more, faster consensus. Strong upper management support. A big difference in the second attempt was they kind of changed a bit their mindset. They had a more risk-based approach versus the first attempt where they were a little more conservative and they're still in their old ways. The ability to adapt to changing conditions, because we didn't build so much rigidity in the second attempt, it allowed us to adapt much more quickly over time. And even if something came up, even like, I don't know, maybe a week before deployment, we could adapt to that. The quick feedback loop, super important. First attempt, I think we showed a screen maybe a month and a half after we started because our complex data model was so complex. We had to build all these screens, and so the client didn't see anything for a month and a half, I believe. And in the second one, we had a process up and running in maybe 2 days. And we were showing the client, and we were iterating, constantly improving, and they saw it right away. I mean, it was a skeleton process with basically blank screens, but still, it showed the potential right there. And finally, we leveraged built-in features. We used the built-in groups functionality, whereas in the first attempt, we didn't use that. There was the news for collaboration that we used that we had judged that was not good enough in the first attempt. And so that all led to a success. So you're probably wondering, okay, I'm talking about agile development, first attempt, second attempt, what we did wrong, what we did right. And you're probably wondering, well, where does the cloud come into this? What does that have to do with anything? Well, Appian Cloud does make a big difference. And the first reason why is because it allows you to focus on business value. Appian has, let's say, I don't like to use the word, but it's a bit of some constraints. The product has constraints and the cloud has constraints. But it's a good thing because it really allows you to focus on the data you want to see and the data you want to capture. So you're not looking for, where the bun's going to be on the screen or the color of the bun or all these superfluous details. You're really concentrating on meeting the business needs. The cloud ecosystems limits customizations and distractions. I mean, you have to stay within the box. And some people see that as a bad thing, but I see it as a good thing. It makes you go faster because people are not asking for lots of things left and right. You're just going faster because you're not, people ask you for something, you're like, well, I can't do it. The cloud doesn't do it. So I'm just going to, there's all these other ways I can satisfy your business need. The other reason why the cloud really helps agile development, it's a productivity multiplier. So on one hand, I have my team at Telefilm working on business features, meeting business needs. And on the other side, I have Appian engineering, who's developing product features, and the Appian operations teams, who's maintaining our Appian cloud instance, making sure it's always up to date and available and everything. So we always have a stable, up-to-date development environment. We get a consultant in, he can start working within hours, not even. Within minutes, probably. He can get in the code, look at it, and maybe start making some modifications. And the seamless upgrades bring new features without any effort. I mean, let's say next month, actually, Apple's going to release a new version of iOS. And Appian's probably going to have an update a couple days later to support the new OS. Could I do that with my small IT team at Telefilm? No way. And finally, the stability and security. And I have another slide after that to really punch that point. But there's a lot more reliability and performance than on-premise systems. having on-premise custom in-house systems means that you have a lot of technology, you have a lot of frameworks, and you have to maintain all of that. In our instance, Telefilm, we have a small IT team. We just can't manage so much. And you have better security due to constant software updates. You're always on the latest version. So I did a bit of an image because an image is worth 1,000 words. So this is our systems right now. These are our core business systems, the technologies that are behind them. And really, it's not important to focus on the technologies. The important part is to focus on the diversity. So each of these technologies have security vulnerabilities. They have bugs. They have a bunch of issues. You have to keep them up to date. And this is the before picture, and this is the after picture. So you're replacing a whole bunch of technologies in the first slide with a much more simplified environment in the second slide. So it makes things much simpler for our development team, for our operations team, for pretty much everybody. So in the end, does the cloud enable Agile? It does. Now, you do have to do certain things to make it smoother, if you will. It's maximized if you keep up to date with the latest product features. So, I mean, it's a bit like leasing a car. So when you lease a car, why are you leasing a car? You want to be with the latest model. Why do you want to have the latest model? Because you probably want the latest engine. Or you might want some new feature that came out, Bluetooth or something. But you're probably going to use these features if you're going to be leasing a car. If you're not, then you'd probably just stick with your old Honda Civic. Same thing with Appian. I think if you're going to be in the cloud and you want to upgrade all the time, you want to have the latest features, you probably should use them to make sure that you're maximizing your investment. The second thing is you need to integrate your project schedule with your the product upgrade lifecycle, so Appian's product upgrade lifecycle. Very important. Typical in-house custom on-prem system, what you do is basically you start with a tech stack, you develop for 2 years, and then you put in production, and then eventually sometime after, maybe 3 or 4 years after, you're like, oh, these things are starting to get out of date, maybe I got to start upgrading. And then it becomes a massive effort. It's like going from, I don't know, Appian 6.1 to 16.1. If you're in the cloud, you have to update constantly, every 3 months. And you also have your project you have to keep going. So you have to kind of synchronize them together to make sure that you're not going to be out of sync. You're not releasing a new version of Appian in the middle of a release cycle, for example. And finally, to ease upgrades, it's best to stick to built-in functionality. It's always best to not go too far off the beaten path if you want to facilitate your upgrades. If you're doing too much fancy stuff, obviously your upgrades might get more complicated and you're going to lose some velocity. So in the end, yes, if it's done right, the cloud accelerates Agile. I thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I'm available.
Hello. Matt and Kelly both, thank you very much. Great perspectives, great advice, great experience. And we do have time here, so I'm sure there are some questions. We'll start right here.
For the cloud deployment, after deploying in cloud, is Appian got upgraded or not after any time? Like a version upgrade happened for our application?
We've gone through, we've been in the cloud since 7.5.
I'm sorry. The question was, since your deployment, have you then subsequently upgraded?
And during that time, you have done any testing of your application again, or no need of that?
No, well, we're pretty conservative when we do our upgrades. We go through the different stages. So we first upgrade in our UAT, test, then we do prod, then dev. We do regressions in all the environments. So far, it's been pretty smooth. So
we haven't seen any problems either.
Yeah.
We've done 2 upgrades since we went live in the 6 months, and with the applications that have been built so far, there hasn't been any testing issues associated with it.
Can you talk a little bit about any integration challenges with being in the cloud? So Appian integrating back to your on-prem data sources, etc.
The cloud integration challenges.
So we've had a couple issues with back-end system integrations. Or SAP, I mentioned earlier, right? One of the things I also found out is the LDAP integration, which we thought would be seamless for us, doesn't work as well in the cloud either. It's different than the on-prem solution, so we actually have to do a JavaScript to make it work. And then those are the two. The other one that we had a little, I would say a little more difficulty with initially was the SharePoint integration. So our back-end system integrations took us, I mean, the better part of 4 to 5 months in the end.
And you were using straight up VPN tunneling across the cloud, or
We did, yes.
Same thing for us. We use VPN tunnels to connect to backend systems. We did have a bit of a setup issues at the beginning. That was mostly due to our another provider, though. But mostly it's been pretty smooth, I would say.
So that means your deployment, everything is in cloud, including the databases?
We have, yeah, everything is in cloud. We just have another provider for the database.
And so in our instance, so the question was around, is the entire database out in the cloud? And in our case, right now it is, but we're actually going to bring some of the proprietary app databases in-house, and so we're going to have a hybrid system where we're going to use the Appian cloud database for some of it, and then the Lam database for the other part of it.
Agile, it's a very good framework for software development, like for development faster. But how do you make sure that you are using Appian to support an improved process? So how do you know that your process is improved before using Appian as a solution to support that process?
Can I take it first?
I think it's important to actually take some context when you're building your processes. I mean, you still have to take into account what a BPM can give you. I don't know if you're coming from a pre-BPM perspective or you already have a BPM. We were coming from a pre-BPM perspective, and you do have to take into account that you are using a BPM, and that gives you certain information that you maybe not have to persist in a tradition, that you wouldn't have to persist that anymore now that you have a BPM, basically. Yeah, exactly, yeah.
In our world, before we embark on a project, actually make them re-engineer the business process.
Yeah.
And through that re-engineering, they have to understand, and we're a big lean house on the manufacturing floor, and so we did a lot of lean training within the business unit as well for non-value added activities. And so we asked them to identify what those non-value added activities are first, so we can make sure as we build out that process that it's eliminating those. And that's really how we're getting the cycle time reductions.
Thank you.
Yeah. My question is to Gary. You said that you bring the proprietary information in-house.
Yes.
Is that a concern because of security, or you want to have that information in-house? Why?
Certain proprietary information that remains in-house, and so just what's the decision-making process for why that is?
Couple reasons. IP, our intellectual property, is everything in our business. I mean, it is flat out everything in our business. Customer confidentiality is everything in our business. And so typically we don't allow that outside of our firewall. And when we started embarking upon BPM, that's one of the questions that product group first asked. Are you going to subject anything in our IP outside of the firewall? Because if so, we're going to say no to it. And it's just a conservative approach associated with our business.
Any final questions? And you can always, of course, ask questions on the app, and come up and find me, come up and find Kelly and Matt, and we can follow up with questions. But is there anything else here in the room? Okay, if not, thank you all very much.